Okay, this is a really quick video that is going to be a quick overview to list in Python. The reason I'm doing this a little bit earlier is we're not quite to the point yet where we're going to formally cover list in the textbook. However, you will probably get a programming assignment that requires you to know a little about list before, like I said, we formally cover it. So it's covered in detail in chapter 7 of the textbook. And lists are similar to arrays in other languages. They actually do a lot more than arrays, but as far as how we think about them or visualize them, they're going to look like arrays to us. I think the best way to do a quick introduction is just to give you some examples and talk about different things. So the first few examples are initializing list, and the way you do that is by having a comma separated list of values in square brackets. So what this statement will do is if numbers doesn't exist, it will create it to be a list. If numbers does exist, it will replace whatever is in numbers with this specified list. So a few things about this. The number of elements obviously is 5. When we get to talking about indexes, like most modern things, indexes start at 0. If we do a print statement and simply say print numbers, it's going to print the whole thing, and it's literally going to print the square brackets with the values inside, exactly what we initialized it with. Now, the name by itself refers to the entire list. To access specific members of the list, after the list name in square brackets, we put the index, or we'll find out later in chapter 7, indexes that we want to deal with. So if I say print numbers of 0, that will print the element in the numbers list at location 0, which is the first element of the array. So that will simply print out the value 1. Now, if you mistype or misunderstand the indexes, and for this case we say print numbers of 5, there is no location 5. It only goes from 0 to 4. So what's going to happen here is it's going to give us an out of range error if we try to access an element of the array that does not exist. Continuing on with some more examples, if we want to declare an empty array, we do that by putting square brackets with nothing inside the square brackets. There's a couple of reasons for this. Maybe you need a list and you need it to start with no elements, or maybe you're just trying to be real clear at the beginning of the program, hey, I'm going to use a list and its name is going to be numbers, and I'll worry about the values later. Like before, if we print that array, there's nothing in it, so the output is literally going to be left square bracket, right square bracket. If I need to add elements to the list, there's lots of different ways to do that, but the simplest form and what you will need for your upcoming programming assignment is to issue this statement. So what happens in Python? Python's an object-oriented language, variables and types have methods or functions that you can call on them. So what this does is it says for our numbers array, append a value, specifically 100 to that. And if you turn around and print that, of course there's a mistake right there. I forgot my closing parentheses, but we'll just pretend the closing parentheses is there. If I now print my numbers array, it's going to print out 100 in square brackets, so you will see that my array now has a single element, which is the value 100. Iterating through a list, this means going through and processing the elements one by one. So if I go back to my numbers array that has 5 values in it, and I wanted to do something, let's say print each of the values in the list, I would say for variable in array colon do something. So what's going to happen is it's going to take the 5 members of the the list numbers, and it's going to set num to the first value, which is 1, and then it's going to print that out, so it would print 1. Then num would reference the second element of the list, index 1, which is the value 2. So that's the way you iterate through the list. I showed you this before, but kind of expanding on it. If you're accessing individual items of a list, you would use the name of the list and then square bracket the location or the index. So this would print index 0 of the array numbers, which is actually the first element of the list. Numbers 2 would talk about index 2, which is actually the third element of the array. And then some modern languages, including Python, allow you to have negative indices. So a positive number is from the beginning of the list, a negative number is from the end. So if I reference numbers at location -1, that's going to give me the last element of the list. Another really common thing to do, and something that you may or may not need to do in your programming assignment, depending on how you code it, is determine the length of a list. And there is a function built into Python called len, which stands for length. You pass it an list name, and it will return the numeric value that is the length of the list, which is how many elements that array has. So that was a really quick introduction to using list. Like I said, you may need that in an upcoming programming assignment.